Hey guys, what is up? Panther here, and now that patch 9.14 is getting very close to release, I wanted to go over some of the biggest things that you need to be keeping an eye out for in this massive patch. I wanted to cover some of the major reworks going on in this patch, as well as some of the new mechanics that are going to be existing, some of the smaller changes. Since patch 9.14 is so massive, we're definitely going to be doing a lot of videos about it in the upcoming days to try and cover as much as possible. If you are interested in this, make sure to like the video and subscribe, as we're going to be posting a ton of new content in the upcoming days. Now, without further ado, let's get into the biggest reworks for this specific patch. Right out of the gate, we have a rework to Galio. Now, I am pretty sad to see this change come through due to the fact that I enjoy Galio so much. He's one of my favorite champions to play. Riot's main goal with this rework to Galio is to make the champion less polarizing in general. You see, oftentimes Galio is just way too powerful in pro play while being a little bit underpowered in solo queue. This makes balancing the champion an absolute nightmare. As a result, Riot is going to be making a lot of changes to Galio in the upcoming patches, starting with this little mini rework. To start off, Galio had the reset mechanic on his passive swapped out for a flat cooldown. In general, this will open up a few different combos that were just inefficient before on Galio. He should have more freedom in the order of which he uses his abilities now, and he won't be forced into a certain optimal combo every single time. With some numbers tuning, he should be able to see a lot more success with this style of a passive. The bigger change, however, is the change to Galio's W. He will no longer be able to flash in the middle of channeling his W. Now, this is a massive nerf to Galio, and this is the reason why Riot is going to be taking such a close look at Galio in the upcoming patches. On top of this, the charge can now be interrupted as well. This was all swapped in for a lower self-slow on the W, but honestly, it's just not going to make up for how hard these changes are going to hit him. If I'm being honest, I do expect some hotfix buffs to Galio, as these changes are just going to absolutely gut him. If you do play a lot of Galio, I recommend staying away from him this patch, as he's going to be suffering into a lot of matchups that he didn't struggle into before. It's probably best to wait a patch or two before picking the champion back up until Riot is able to get the champion back on his feet. My prediction for Galio is we might see the lowest win rate we have ever seen on any champion ever with this rework going through. I could be wrong, however, so I will definitely be keeping an eye out on Galio this patch, just to see how he's faring. Now, moving on to Malphite, this is the change I am most excited for on this patch. I'm more excited for the Malphite change than I am for the Renekton changes, and that says a lot. You see, this is a change that I have been asking for on Malphite for years. Going on like 3 years now, I've wanted Malphite's W to be an auto reset. And that is exactly what the core of these changes to Malphite revolve around. Before we touch on that though, let's quickly brush over his passive and some updates to that. There are a few clarity changes to Malphite's passive, making it more apparent to when it refreshes. Additionally, Malphite will also grow in size the more armor that he has, which is pretty cool. This allows the character to feel more like the hulking mountain that he is. The only downside to this is having a larger hitbox means that you are going to be hit more easily by spells, which does kind of suck from a gameplay aspect. Since Riot has not explicitly said whether or not his champion model increases along with his size, it is hard to tell whether or not these changes will have a real gameplay impact. Malphite's Q has also had some slight quality of life changes made to it. In general, the Q is just recoded so that you will be faster on average. It will now measure between two different values and take whichever value is higher. That's all you really need to know. This was also paired with a raw numbers buff to Malphite, so he should be a little bit faster than he was in the previous patches. Now moving on to the really exciting part, Malphite's W. Malphite's W has received a complete overhaul. As I mentioned before, Malphite's W is now an auto attack reset, and the AoE that it affects is closer to Titanic Hydra than what it was before, which was closer to a Tiamat. The auto attack reset is going to be an empowered auto dealing extra damage, and every auto after that will still have the buff applied to it, doing a little bit less damage than the auto attack reset itself. This ability scales off of armor and ability power, so you can still go AP Malphite if you want, or you can go that full tank Malphite. This is just a fantastic quality of life change for Malphite overall, which will allow him to duel a lot better in the early stages. It'll also allow Grass Malphite to better trade early on, as he will be able to use the auto attack reset to get grass procs when he previously would not have been able to. Next in line is probably the biggest change to be shipped in this patch. This is reworks to Swain's passive, Q, and ultimate. Starting with the simplest change is going to be to Swain's Q. Minions are no longer going to be able to block Swain's Q. It will now penetrate through minions and only stop on champions. This ability will also no longer restore mana upon killing a unit. As a result, Swain is going to be able to shove waves quicker, however he will run out of mana quicker as well. Now the AoE on Swain's Q was also adjusted. It's going to be slightly shorter range, however the angle of the fan is going to be slightly wider. Next we need to cover Swain's passive. The charges system on Swain's passive has been completely removed. His passive will no longer be used to empower his ultimate. What it's been changed to is now every time that Swain procs his passive, he's going to gain 5 permanent maximum HP. As a result, he has received a little bit of tuning to his base HP and his HP growth, but Swain should have more HP overall. The later the game goes, the more HP Swain will have. This, paired with the fact that most pros were already going grass before the rework, will mean that Swain will be walking around with 4000 HP pretty commonly as a mage bruiser. Swain's new passive now ties in pretty well with his new ultimate as well. The old obtuse and convoluted system is no longer. It's now a very simple ultimate. There are no restrictions on Swain's new ultimate. You activate it once to start it, you activate it again to end it. It's that simple. When Swain does activate his ultimate, he gains an additional 5 max HP for every shard that he has. This effectively doubles the bonus HP that he gets from his passive when he is ulting. Instead of only draining the 3 closest enemies to him, Swain now drains everything in his radius, including invisible targets. Now this is a massive quality of life buff, as he's able to hit all 5 enemy champions while diving. The damage portion on Swain's second ultimate has been changed to deal damage based on the amount of health that Swain healed during his ultimate. This is a very unique mechanic, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye out on unique interactions with things like Spirit Visage, Ravenous Hunter, and Revitalize. The damage on Swain's second R is still capped, however, which means Swain isn't going to be able to go through a spell vamping rampage before nuking an entire team. Overall, these changes seem like a pretty massive buff to Swain, so I would definitely recommend trying him out and seeing how you like him. I did get an opportunity to play quite a bit of Swain on the PvE, and let me tell you, these changes feel so fun to play. His lack of wave clear is fixed, and his new ultimate allows you to just walk through team fights feeling like an absolute monster. I'm very interested in seeing whether or not this translates to the live servers and if Swain is as good as I think he is. Next up is the terror of the top lane, Tahm Kench. If you are a top laner, then you know how much of a pain it is to play against Tahm Kench. This champion just feels so unfair to play against. All he does is walk at you, eat you, and kill you, and you can't kill him. It's so unfair. Well, Rito has heard your cries, and as a result, Tahm Kench should be easier to lane against due to these reworks that he's going to be receiving in patch 9.14. Starting with Tahm Kench's passive, his spells and auto attacks will no longer deal increased damage based on how many stacks of acquired taste the target has. This was traded in for a linear scaling based on Tahm Kench's max HP. This means that he shouldn't be dealing too much damage with his passive until he's actually able to go shop and buy HP. Tahm Kench's Q received a few changes. First of all, the cooldown is going to be increased, which is a blessing. No longer will he permanently be able to keep stacks of his passive on you with his Q and no CDR. On top of this, if Tahm Kench stuns you with his Q, it will consume all stacks of acquired taste off of the target. This is pretty massive because it means that Tahm Kench will no longer be able to stun you into Devour, a huge CC chain. Earlier on into the game, it will allow the target more opportunity to get away after a stun lands. The slow percentage on his Q was reduced and traded in for a longer duration instead. Stun duration was also upped as well. This means that if Tahm Kench is stunning you at melee range, he'll still be able to devour you, but if he stuns you at max range, you'll probably be able to get away. Now moving on to Tahm Kench's W, two things have changed. First of all, you will not be nearsighted while being devoured by Tahm Kench. You'll be able to see just like you normally would be able to outside of him. On top of this, the micro stun after Tahm Kench's W has been removed and you will be able to move immediately after being spat out. As a trade-off, Riot has made it so that jungle Tahm Kench is a little bit more viable, as he will be able to devour buffs on top of large monsters as well. He will still obviously be unable to devour Dragon and Baron, but anything else he should be able to devour. Tahm Kench's E has also received quite a few changes that should make it possible to burst him as the game goes on later. Tahm Kench will generally be worse off in extended trades while sustaining quite a bit more with these new changes. Basically what happened in these changes is he will get less gray health, however he will heal for 100% of the gray health. His gray health mechanic is going to be pretty much identical to Pyke's gray health mechanic. The only difference is Tahm Kench is able to convert his gray health into a shield still. Generally, his sustain has gone up in the laning phase, however his all-in potential has gone severely down. This should open up windows for all-in champions to be able to actually win against Tahm Kench. That's right, you heard me. Bruisers now finally stand a chance against this champion. As a trade-off, Tahm Kench will be much better into poke and ranged lanes as his sustain has gone through the roof with these changes. Paired with a Doran's Shield and Revitalize and Second Wind, Tahm Kench will be pretty much impossible to poke out of a lane. Never fear, however, as a ranged top laner, because you will still be able to call your jungler up for help in order to kill him, as he is a lot easier to burst. Now the last thing that I wanted to touch on is a new mechanic added to League of Legends. This mechanic is called Shield Breaker and it is starting off on two champions, Renekton and Blitzcrank. Shield Breaker is exactly what it sounds like. All it does is it breaks any existing shields on the target. One thing of note to keep in mind is that Shield Breaker will break the shield before applying any damage that the ability does. This mechanic is being added to Renekton's W and Blitzcrank's ultimate. This is going to make Renekton the king of Bruiser's top lane, meaning that no Sterix champion could ever duel him. This will also make Blitzcrank the ultimate anti-enchanter support. No longer will you be able to dump massive amounts of shields on a target that gets hooked, as Blitzcrank will completely remove them instantly. This is a pretty unique mechanic and I'm excited to see it introduced into League, however I do think it will need a lot of tuning and adjustment. I'll be keeping a close eye out on both Renekton and Blitzcrank this patch, and just how the new Shield Breaker mechanic is working in general. That's all that I have for you guys today. Be sure to stay tuned as we will be releasing a full patch notes overview as well as a tier list for this patch soon in the upcoming days. I would also be interested in doing a video on this new Shield Breaker mechanic, especially on Renekton as he is one of my best champions. If you haven't already, make sure to go check out our website gameleap.com. There we have hundreds of videos done by challenger players sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. There we have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses done by the best. If that is something that you're interested in, make sure to check it out. As always, I hope you learned something valuable and I will see you in the next one.